I'm Tim and I'll be your host for the very first program of Nashoba Talks. Today we will be hearing from 5 Nashoba seniors who recently completed a research project that culminated in Nashoba Talk. Students presented their talks on a topic of their choice for Mrs. Carter and Mrs. Harris senior English satire classes. Today we will hear from Mike Curtin on youth, sports, and trophies, Nick Don on leadership, Lisa Fossa on stage makeup, Chris Bell on concussions, and Charlie Lamplow on farms and food. First up will be Mike, who poses an interesting question about trophies. Should every child get a trophy in youth sports? Here's what he has to say.
I'm here to tell you all today that there is a notorious epidemic destroying youth sports in America, and it's not the well-known head traumas or knee injuries, or even crazed coaches obsessed and solely focused on vicariously competing through their own child. The problem with youth sports today is the over-distribution of things like these, participation trophies. These were once rare things, sterling silver, loathing cups, bought from jewelry stores for truly special occasions. But in the 1960s, they began to be mass-produced and marketed in catalogs to teachers and coaches. However, today, it seems that trophies are common occurrences that are awarded to any accomplishment or lack thereof. I might as well give you all a participation trophy for just sitting there in the auditorium audience, just consuming oxygen successfully. Children make mistakes. Our job should not be to spin those losses into decorated victories. Instead, our job is to help our kids overcome setbacks, to help them see that progress over time is more important than any particular win or loss, and to help them graciously congratulate the child who has succeeded when they have failed. To do that, we need to refuse all the meaningless plastic and tin that are certainly destined for landfills. Participation trophies destroy athletes' motivation and create narcissism. This trophy debate has recently spread to social media when Pittsburgh Steelers All-Pro linebacker James Harrison tweeted, "I came home to find out that my boys received 2 trophies for nothing, participation trophies. While I'm very proud of my boys for everything they do and will encourage them till the day I die, these trophies will be given back until they earn a real trophy. I'm sorry I'm not sorry for believing that everything in life should be earned, and I'm not about to raise 2 boys to be men by making them believe that they are entitled to something just because they tried their best, because sometimes your best is not enough, and that should drive you to want to do better, not cry and whine until somebody gives you something to shut you up and keep you happy." Trophy companies and engraving services have experienced a 6.9% annual growth since 2010 and have inflated into a $3 billion industry. We have to stop letting the trophy industrial complex run our children's lives. In Southern California, a regional branch of the American Youth Soccer Association hands out roughly 3,500 trophies annually. Most players get 1, but 33% of the players receive 2 trophies. AYSO accounts 12% of its yearly budget on trophies. Aside from the negative and intangible qualities that the over-distribution of trophies create, if distribution was limited to deserving winners, significant capital would be available to invest in equipment and the physical development of our young athletes. This football season, our football team experienced one of the most successful seasons in program history when we became Division II Massachusetts state champions. However, the underlying reason for the program turnaround took place at historic Crocker Field in Fitchburg, Mass. 10 months prior to competing at Gillette Stadium for a state title. We were heavily favored and felt as though we were entitled to win the game against Fitchburg. However, Fitchburg completely outplayed us and we were unable to overcome adversity that occurred in the first half of play. Without the embarrassing loss in the previous year that caused us to miss playoffs, we would not have been able to find the motivation to better ourselves at off-season lifting sessions at 5 a.m. before school. Overall, our losing season humbled us and helped us climb from the bottom of Central Mass to the top of the state by keeping us extremely motivated and hungry for victory. To be clear, I am not suggesting that youth sports must obsess with wins and losses and abuse the majority of athletes who do not transform themselves into victors. I am simply suggesting that participation trophies mask the valuable lesson of failure that is the foundation of key accomplishments in not just sports but in life. Awards can be powerful motivators, but non-stop recognition does not inspire children to succeed. Instead, it can cause them to underachieve. Without experiencing the unpleasant but imperative agony of defeat, Our children will be oversensitive, self-centered citizens in an unforgiving society.
Mike makes a good point. Giving every child a trophy can have some negative consequences in the long run. But then again, for anyone in a position of leadership, it's a tough call to make. Let's hear from Nick Don on what just makes a good leader.
I don't believe that people learn to be leaders. They either are or they are not. And leadership is something that's inside of you. I believe you're born of a certain character that predisposes you to step up to when the opportunity or need arises. I would also submit that the times have changed and that today's leaders find it more difficult to lead and make decisive decisions because they cannot manage their environment or circumstances surrounding a decision. What makes one person a leader and another a follower? By stepping up. I mean taking that leadership role while others around you do not. You see more examples in movies than you do in real life. It's like kind of fantasy, superhero outcome, where true leaders emerge more often on the movie screen than on the nightly news. A couple weeks ago, I went to see the new Star Wars movie, and a character who begins the movie as a stormtrooper, spoiler alert, someone enlisted is taught to do the bidding of the evil empire, change when something clicks inside of him, that what he's doing is wrong. He then goes against his training and his leadership and begins to fight for what he believes is right. He shows his leadership by fighting against what's wrong and protecting others who are weaker and not able to fight for themselves. There was an environment that called for such a bold action to be taken in a circumstance that had a consequence, an impact requiring action to take full fight. Without spoiling the outcome of the movie, a relatively normal, unextraordinary person rises to the occasion and becomes something more. Our leaders today are certainly not movie characters, but what's preventing them from taking on challenges and making more hard decisions? Congress, the president, current military leaders seem more concerned about keeping their jobs and making hard decisions. Yes, there's room to debate me that they are already making hard decisions, but what I mean decisions that rival those of our past great leaders, what has really changed from then to now. In Germany, Angela Merkel took a serious gamble with accepting so many Middle Eastern refugees. They could have been dismissed and left for others to deal with, but she recognized her country was in the middle of an issue. She owned the environment and acted on the circumstance at hand with so many refugees at Germany's borders. This was and remains a very bold move on her part, as there were many who disagreed with her in these actions. She appealed to her constituents through the history of Germany, and on moral ground, they should welcome anyone looking to better themselves. Her approach worked and stands as a great example of true leadership. I'm not saying that leaders are such as Putin or Merkel are better than in the US, but rather they were in situations that allowed them to step out. However, their decisive decisions and their actions can't be underestimated when they take control of their environment and circumstances. I submit that the key variables that allow for decisive leadership to emerge from our environment and circumstance. When you control your environment and the circumstances around an issue, then you can make decisive decisions with the full support of your populace. I also believe that great leaders can change their environment to support the leadership actions they need to make to be successful. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nick. You made a lot of good points on what makes a great leader. And sometimes the best kinds of leadership are the people who get things ready behind the scenes so everything looks great in the end. Lisa Fossa did her Nashoba talk on stage makeup and effects. Let's check out this insight into the world of dramatic effects.
If you've ever watched a horror, sci-fi, or fantasy TV show or movie, you've seen special effects makeup being used. Special effects makeup includes body painting, using prosthetics or fake blood. It's basically any makeup that's used to transform a person or actor. Special effects makeup is used in the same way that costumes are used for movies. It's a crucial part of a lot of characters. Reagan from The Exorcist is an example of an iconic special effects makeup look that was used in a horror movie to make someone look sick, injured, and possessed. The makeup artist who worked on The Exorcist was Dick Smith. He not only transformed actress Linda Blair into the demon that she is in the movie, he also was the one who figured out how to create the effect of projectile vomiting. He's the only makeup artist that's ever won an Oscar, and he won it in 2011 at the age of 89 for his work in Amadeus, where he used makeup to age F. Murray Abraham. Some basic techniques used in special effects makeup include using liquid latex, clay, foam, polymorph plastic, tinfoil and tape, or wax to create prosthetic pieces and adhering those prosthetics using spirit gum, liquid latex, or any other skin-safe adhesive. Liquid latex and tissue paper are the most commonly used for simulating pieces of skin or tears in skin. When I first tried special effects makeup, all I had to work with was a tiny bottle of liquid latex, some fake blood, and a small palette of grease-based colors that my mom bought for me, and whatever I could find around my house. Using those and what little I had learned from tutorials on YouTube, I turned myself into a zombie for Halloween. Let me be the first to tell you that liquid latex smells way worse than you'd expect, and peeling bloody latex-covered oatmeal off your face is not that much fun. Now, I have a little more experience and quite a bit more makeup, even though I still use the same bottle of liquid latex I did back then. Over the years, I've learned new techniques and perfected older ones, such as creating realistic-looking bruises. Most of the techniques use mainly basic household objects, such as tinfoil and masking tape, to create cheap prosthetics, or even coffee grounds, which create very realistic-looking burned skin when you mix them with liquid latex. In the following video, I'm going to be showing how to do a simple special effects makeup look using liquid latex and tissues. In the 2 years since I first attempted doing special effects makeup, I've become a lot more aware of the different kinds of makeup and paid a lot more attention to the different people that do it. I honestly probably spend a little too much time just sitting around watching other people put makeup on, but I can call it research and that makes it okay, right? Well, while watching these hours and hours of tutorials, I've seen that I not only learned techniques and got inspiration for Halloween costumes, but I've also learned that there's a lot more to makeup than what people are familiar with. Makeup transforms whoever's wearing it. Maybe it gives you a little extra confidence, or maybe it gives you the chance to be someone else temporarily. Either way, it transforms you. Some of the makeup I've come across in the hours of research include the makeup look on the left done by Made You Look, using only body paints, and this very simple example of using a prosthetic made in a homemade clay mold using gelatin by the artist Mikey. These were both done by professionals who make a living off creating special effects looks and providing online tutorials that teach you step by step how they did each makeup look. Almost everything I've learned has been from online tutorials and trial and error. There was one time that I tried reading a book, but it didn't last very long because it's a lot easier to watch a 7-minute video that shows and explains how to do everything step by step than to read for hours if you're learning the same basic information. Although I did learn how to turn makeup into a job from the book, I really didn't learn the techniques that you need. I guess you're probably wondering why out of all of the topics I chose this one. It's sort of obscure and Halloween was months ago, but it's something that doesn't have to only exist around Halloween. I believe that special effects makeup deserves more recognition. If you ask the average person what comes to mind when someone mentions makeup, you'll hear things like lipstick, mascara, or eyeliner. But there's more to makeup than the fashion and beauty makeup people are familiar with. Makeup doesn't have to be used to cover a zit or make your eyes pop. It can be used to create anything you can think of. It's an art form that rarely gets the praise and support it deserves. It takes practice, skill, and research to create realistic cuts, bruises, and injuries. Personally, I've spent hours studying how different types of bruises look and practicing recreating them in order to be able to easily recreate them. Makeup gives people the freedom to become anyone or anything they want. It can be used to make a statement or create a living piece of artwork. Like any artwork, makeup can influence the viewer's emotions. Special effects makeup is often used to play with people's fears and to make them feel uneasy or scared. The viewers are just as important to a makeup look as the artist. The reaction of the viewers is an essential part of each look. Truly great works of art are the ones that get the most reactions, and makeup is no exception to that. What's the point of being able to turn someone into a creature if no one else is going to see them? Museums exist for the sole purpose of displaying artwork, but what exists for showing off special effects makeup? Nothing. That's why I've chosen to talk about it. It's as much of an art form as painting, yet it isn't given half the recognition that painting gets. Sure, it's used in movies, but even movies don't give it the recognition it deserves. Movies are actively trying to replace traditional special effects makeup with computer-generated images and creatures. Special effects makeup is a dying art form, simply because no one wants to recognize it anymore. I only hope that by talking about it today, I made at least one person here start considering makeup an art form.
That's so cool. Now I know how to do my makeup for Halloween. Thanks for the tutorial, Lisa. If you're suffering from an injury that requires more than just makeup, listen to this Nashoba talk from Chris Bell on concussions and the dangers that go along with them.
I'm here to tell you a different side of the story. The concussions are actually being overdiagnosed. From a show of hands, how many of you have ever had some type of experience with concussions? I know I have. I've had a number of concussions, and what I've come to realize is doctors' current methods for diagnosing concussions are far from reliable. So, Dr. Creighton, who's been practicing sports medicine for 24 years, believes that many people are actually being harmed simply from all the hype around concussions. So, the most common way of diagnosing a concussion is simply by asking an athlete, are you experiencing any symptoms? These could involve concussions, headaches, vision impairment, balance problems, worsened memory, mood changes, and a lot more. So the problem is that none of these are scientifically testable symptoms. It's all just an athlete's opinion. Do I feel like I have a headache? I guess kind of. You could say I have one. And the problem is that all the hype around concussions, athletes are getting the placebo effect, expecting to feel something just because their doctor's asking about it. Another problem with this method is patients can easily exaggerate, misinterpret, or even fake symptoms if they have any motivation to get out of anything such as schoolwork. I know I've gotten out of schoolwork a number of times, not faking anything, but it would be really easy to do so if I just said I felt a headache after a head injury, even if I didn't have a concussion. Also, with all the social media hype and all sorts of different doctors publishing new studies, people are more likely to imagine symptoms that aren't even there and associate unrelated symptoms, such as if I've gotten a little less sleep this week because of midterms and I've been studying, if I told my doctor I hit my head and then they asked me if I'd had less sleep, they might contribute that less sleep to a concussion rather than just me having been up late studying. Another tool that is used to detect concussions is the impact test. Has anyone ever had to take the impact test here? Most athletes have to. And so I've actually taken it enough times that I'm starting to recognize the shapes. This shows that it's unreliable. I know that this one up here, this is one of the ones that is on the test, not one of the fake ones that they ask you to see if you can remember. So the more times I've taken the test, I can actually remember, and I can either pass the test even if I have a concussion, or I could fail the test if I don't have a concussion. This goes to show that it's not a reliable way to diagnose a concussion. Also, according to the CDC, from 2001 to 2010, the rate of traumatic brain injury related emergency department visits has increased by 70%. As you can see from this graph, both in boys and girls, the rate of concussions has dramatically increased. So, on first glance, this would indicate that concussions actually are a growing problem. But why would people be getting more concussions? Wouldn't, with all the new safety regulations and safer helmets, wouldn't the rate of concussions be going down? So this is what I thought, and in reality, this 70% rise actually comes from an overdiagnosis of concussions. The number of concussions hasn't changed, just doctors are calling more and more injuries under the umbrella term concussion. That's it.
That was a lot of good information, Chris. Sometimes keeping healthy is more than just avoiding sports. Charlie Lamplow did his TED Talk on how we need the food that farms produce.
Alright, so I started working at a local farm about 5 years ago, and I just started for the money and didn't really think anything of it. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today about no farms, no food. And now I'm not one of those persons that wants to save the environment and stop the use of chemicals and pesticides, because I know they are all completely necessary for food production. The farm I work at cannot be sold for development under an agricultural conservation easement. Not a lot of farms have these, and it allows the farm to never be sold for development, which most farms nowadays are being sold for development. And this is their bumper sticker campaign that's really starting to spread out and catch the attention of many people. We need to start opening our minds up because we lose about 50 acres of farmland every hour, which equates to around 450 acres lost last year. In New England alone, we need 4 million acres of we have 4 million acres of farmland, but we need about 16 million. And since the 1980s, we've lost about 10% of the farmland, which is around 24 million acres, enough to feed millions and millions of people. And during that 10% decrease, the population has increased 21%. And as you can see here, in 1920, one farmer would feed about 19 mouths. In the 70s, 26, and now 155. And this graph isn't so much referring to the increase in technology, which has helped, but more the decrease in farms and the increase in population. One advocate for it said that we need to develop both at the same time while keeping in mind that you can't develop one too fast or the other too slow, or else you'll get caught out and you won't have one or the other. And food is the ultimate essential to life, and we really take it for granted, especially in New England and in Stowe and in this county. And we'd rather have like an extra square foot in the house or a bigger yard than have more food, because we don't really take it for granted. And another local farmer says we are losing farmland at alarming rates to development, and it's becoming more difficult to find adequate and affordable labor to work on farms. And this also agrees with the picture that we have less farmers now. And we have found alternatives to this, but many people don't like them, such as GMOs. And people say that they're bad and all, which they are, but it is the only way that farmers are able to now keep up with the decrease in land. And in Stowe, we have lost about 100 acres in like the last 5 years to development. because it's easier for a farmer to sell their land and make millions of dollars for development than sell it as a farm where they'll only make a few million. And most of us just expect to have the necessities like food and shelter and clothing, but we really take these for granted, and I think we need to pay more attention to that. And then this is another sign, and it says no farmers, no food, no future, because without farmers you can't grow the food, and without land you can't have the food, and then there's nothing to look forward to. And then I like this sign. It said our children can't eat money, because essentially if we don't have the land, then we won't be able to, even with all the money in the world, we won't be able to farm and produce food. And the American Farmland Trust has created the agricultural conservation easements, and it has saved about 5 million acres of land so far. And this should make you question what you could do differently, how you could support a local farm, but also raises the question of what happens if both these trends continue. But that's the problem that we hope to never answer. And No Farms, No Food campaign is not the answer, but it will create awareness and hopefully stop this.
Thanks, Charlie. That was an interesting perspective on farming. Well, that's it for now. Thank you to each student who shared their presentations with us. I'm Tim, and I'll see you next time on Nashoba Talks.